Okay, good morning, everybody. It is Monday. It is now November 2nd, election day tomorrow. I'm going to try to get through this set with just one so I don't have to split it up. So I'm going to go fairly quickly. There's 11 slides. So let's get started. So we're talking about the presidency, of course, and we're talking about now the expansion of power of the office of president. And the idea here is the role as the United States became prominent on the world stage, the role of the president's changed dramatically. And the reason for that is that we are now a superpower. We've got responsibilities. Things happen quickly. There's a lot of different things that have happened that have caused the president to garner a lot of power, much more so than the framers ever thought that would happen. The technology has been a thing, has been an idea here. Things go quickly. Decisions need to be made quickly. Things like that. Congress does not make decisions quickly, whether they're working well or not. And various presidents over time have developed new roles. Um, and let's talk about like the 1950s and 60s, political scientists and historians, and sometimes this is still true. Um, we look at presidents as being powerful or not powerful, and political scientists and historians have seemed to favor the powerful presidency in the 50s and 60s, and they've rated presidents, and sometimes still do, from strong to weak. Um, in the 1970s, that sort of started to change. After Vietnam and Johnson and Nixon, things started to change about looking at the role of the power of the president. Political scientists started to argue that the president had become too powerful, and that is certainly an idea still today. Ever since essentially World War II, this idea has come around that yes, the president is getting power and more and more and more power, and it's consolidating itself in the executive branch. Um, it's been more of a gridlock situation from 1980 onward, and that's because Congress and the presidency have flip flopped in who controls which, in which party. So things have sort of settled down a little bit. And it usually is, and you might imagine this is a sort of axiomatic, I suppose, that the people who favor a strong presidency are generally the people of the party of the president at the time. So if you're a Democrat and a Democrat is president, you're like, yes, strong presidency, yay. But if you're a Democrat and a Republican is president, it's like, no, the president has too much power, and it works the other way around too. That's kind of where we sit right now. So let's look at the chief executive function of the president. The president presides over the administration of government. That is essentially the major idea the framers set in motion: the executive, the administration of government. Again, you can see that in the Constitution with this line here. They are to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Okay, that is supposed to be the primary mission, certainly set up by the Constitution back when they wrote it. They do control the bureaucracy by appointing about 600 high-level officials, cabinet secretaries, and sub-cabinet officials. Those are to be confirmed by the Senate, and about 2,500 lower level that are not Senate confirmed positions. They submit agency budgets to Congress, all of the cabinet agencies and whatnot. Those budgets come to the White House, and then the White House submits it through an organization we're going to talk about momentarily called the Office of Management and Budget. So this is part of presiding over the administration of government, asking for money to administer. Recent presidents have politicized the bureaucracy a little bit, and we'll talk about that when we do the bureaucracy, which is the last part of this unit coming up next week. But recent presidents have politicized the bureaucracy more than earlier ones. All right, so let's look at the office of vice president. There are two constitutional roles for the vice president. Number one, they are president of the Senate, and remember, they do a tie-breaking vote only if necessary. And the other role is essentially waiting for the president to die. These are the constitutional roles. This is a quote from our first vice president ever. My country has in its wisdom contrived for me the most insignificant office that ever the invention of man contrived or his imagination conceived. Yes, that is John Adams. He clearly did not think much of being the vice president as far as the office goes. The next one is a little more concise and a little more direct. The vice presidency is not worth a pitcher of warm spit. That is the first vice president for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, John Nance Garner, who was the vice president for FDR through 2 terms, his first 2 terms. So you can see the idea. Some vice presidents didn't really care for that particular job. However, things have changed, and really they've changed since President Carter back in the mid-70s. The vice presidents, again, have been given more and more responsibility since Carter. And Carter did it on purpose because he did not have a whole lot of experience in Washington. He was a governor of Georgia, so he was an outsider. He campaigned that way. And when he got there, he needed somebody to help him work through the intricacies of working with Congress, working with the government. So starting then, most vice presidents have had tremendous experience in government. So we start with Mondale. That was Carter's vice president. He had been in the Senate for a long, long time, and he knew how to navigate Congress. Vice President Bush, who will become President Bush, was also extremely well connected in Washington throughout his time. He was Reagan's VP. Gore, very, very much connected as a senator in Washington. He was Clinton's VP, and Clinton was essentially an outsider. Joe Biden for Obama. Obama had very, very little experience in government. Joe Biden had almost 40 years by that time. You know, he's got like 47 now in government. And then Mike Pence, again, for Trump. No Washington experience. Mike Pence had been in every particular part of the legislative branch. He'd been a representative. He'd been a senator. He'd also been a governor of a state, Indiana. So very well experienced. So you get the idea what they're going for here. They've been intimately involved in policy. Again, that's the change that happened since Carter. The cabinet. Let's talk about the cabinet really quick. The cabinet is a group of presidential advisors. They are the people who run the various departments. You know, the Justice Department, the State Department, all of those things. Defense Department. There are 15 of them. 14 are called secretaries of whatever, secretaries of defense, secretary of health and human services, and the attorney general just has a different name. He's the head of the Justice Department. Again, not mentioned in the Constitution. It is something that has been set up ever since Washington set up a group of advisors. Needed a Secretary of State, Attorney General, those kinds of things. So they really only advise the president on their issues. Usually they carry out the instructions of the president. And when we talk about the bureaucracy at the end of this unit, we'll talk about how they end up working with the bureaucrats that work under them. They are subject to Senate approval. Those can be contentious when the Senate is controlled by another party. And so that comes up, just like judges and justices as well. Okay, so the executive office. The executive office of the president is created by legislation as well as by the president. There are 3 major bodies. The National Security Council. So we'll talk. These are the 3 you need to know. Created in 1947, coordinates the foreign policy and military advisors. Run by the person called the National Security Advisor, who is a position that does not have to be confirmed by the Senate. So it is someone the president can pick to be his intimate, close advisor as far as all national security policy goes. The next one is the Council of Economic Advisors. There are 3 members appointed by the president and to advise on economic policy. And then the last one, I mentioned it earlier, the Office of Management and Budget. This is the office that prepares the president's budget. It is where everything goes. It's called the clearinghouse for budgets, legislative requests from cabinet agencies, and the executive agencies. They gather them all of the requests that come out of the cabinet. We need this much money to run this department next year, etc. And they put it all together and they create the president's budget proposal that then goes to Congress, and the Congress goes, yeah, whatever, we're going to make our own. Okay, a couple more slides. The White House staff. Really important because they are completely loyal to the president. There's about 600 of them. The presidents have varying numbers. Some might add a little more, some might take a little bit away. It all depends on their style. But they are, the reason we can say they're completely loyal to the president is because they do not have to be confirmed by Congress, confirmed by the Senate. So they, like the chief of staff of the president, they're legislative liaisons to Congress, the press secretary, the National Security Advisor, which we talked about, who runs the National Security Council, the senior advisors, the President's counsel, the lawyer, the counsel's office. All of those things are part of the White House staff. They are relied on for information, policy options, and analysis, and they do not have to go and be subjected to hearings by Congress like the cabinet secretaries do. This is why they're so important. This is why they're completely loyal to the president. They can be organized however the president wants. They can do this, that, the other thing. They can add, take, subtract, whatever it is the president wants. It's their staff, so they get to do however they want. They are central to the policymaking progress, and again, without congressional oversight, and that's the key thing for them. It is without congressional oversight, so they do not have to tell Congress what they've talked to about the president. It's where the president can get candid, absolutely candid, honest assessments that don't go anywhere except into the president's ears. All right, lastly for today, the office of the First Lady. That is obviously not an official position. However, you've got different ways that they've been handled. We can go all the way back to Abigail Adams, Dolly Madison. They counseled the president. They advocated for their husbands. They were sometimes true, certainly in the sense of 18th and 19th century ideas, true counselors to the president. Mrs. Wilson, Woodrow Wilson's wife, was de facto president for Wilson's last year. Because Wilson suffered a stroke and really didn't make any more public appearances. And basically, his chief of staff, if that's what it was called back then, and his wife would basically come out of the office or whatever and say, Woodrow wants to do this. So, you never really know, because he did have a severe stroke, that you never really know what was really going on there. Eleanor Roosevelt, First Lady for a long time, tireless campaigner for FDR's ideas. And during the Depression and all that, she was a big part of selling the president's policies. Okay, most now, however, choose to promote a cause. So it's a little bit different. Mental health, that was Mrs. Carter's, Rosalind Carter's. Teen drug use, that was Mrs. Reagan's. Literacy was an issue for Mrs. Bush, George H.W. Bush's wife, Barbara Bush, and for Mrs. Bush, George W. Bush's wife, Laura Bush. Yeah, and they both did literacy. Childhood obesity was Michelle Obama's, and online bullying is Mrs. Trump's. Hillary Clinton took a much more of a different idea. She had policy responsibility and influence in judicial appointments and things like that. So that was a little bit different. Probably that's very rare for that to happen. So anyway, so that's it for this part for today. We will pick up again with the next lecture later in the week, and one more reading to do, and then one more lecture, and then we're ready for a quiz. So have a great day. We'll see you. Remember, Tuesday's an off day. Wednesday, we will get back at it. All right, thanks. See you later.